Nikko Jenkins actually testified from the defense table. He could barely raise his hand to be sworn in because of the
On July 30th, he crossed racial, gender, and city boundaries to commit his murders.
50 years to run consecutive to all murder convictions at counts 1, 4, 7.
I got Nikko Jenkins. I got you.
Sorry for the victims. I feel sorry for all four of them. I feel sorry for people who got hurt.
You've heard of organized crime families, those descendants through the years who keep it in the lineage and commit similar acts of terror, whether that be kidnapping, theft, violence, or slaying. But you have probably never heard of the Leverings, Nebraska's own unorganized crime family.
History of violence, the brutal crimes, and an interview where Jenkins confessed to the murders. Then, Jenkins said he is innocent, but he confessed to the killings because he could be excused for the rest of the hearing and go back to Lincoln. That's where he's being housed in the prison system.
The patriarch, Levi Levering, was an upstanding Native American tribal chief whose subsequent offspring produced some less than savory characters. Down the bloodline, they went with the crimes getting more horrific and more prevalent, until the current generation when Levi's great-great-grandson Nikko Jenkins, with the help of his mother, sister, cousin, and uncle, committed multiple criminal acts so heinous and vile they were almost impossible to believe. Nikko Jenkins' crime. Nikko Allen Jenkins, born September 16, 1986, is an American spree assassin convicted of committing 4 slayings in Omaha, Nebraska, in August 2013. The slayings occurred within a month after he had been released from prison after serving 10.5 years of the 18 years to which he had been sentenced for a carjacking committed at age 15 and for charges committed in prison. On August 18, around 7 a.m., the body of Curtis Bradford was found outside a detached garage at 18th Street and Clark Street by a man returning home from a night shift at a convenience store. Investigators arrived to find 2 bullet wounds in Bradford's back. It was later revealed that Bradford and Jenkins had posed for a Facebook photo posted the day before. Bradford would be the only victim familiar to Jenkins. Jenkins' 4th and final victim, Andrea Kruger, was discovered on August 21 at about 2:15 a.m. by a deputy sheriff responding to a shots-fired call. Her body was found lying on the road with multiple 12-gauge shotgun wounds to the face, neck, and shoulder. Kruger had been returning home after a bartending shift. Surveillance footage showed her locking up earlier, and then at 6:30 that evening, Kruger's gold 2012 Chevrolet Traverse SUV was found abandoned 12 miles away in an alley. Later that week, a news conference was held by Douglas County Sheriff Tim Dunning, in which he stated,
On July 30th, he crossed racial, gender, and city boundaries to commit his murders.
That investigators believe the SUV had been abandoned roughly 2.5 hours after being stolen, and that a feeble attempt had been made at setting the vehicle's interior ablaze. On August 30, 2013, Jenkins was arrested on an unrelated terroristic threats charge. By then, the evidence against him had mounted. Investigators had the image of a female associate on surveillance footage at a local gun outlet buying the kind of distinctive ammunition that had been used to commit the slayings.
Tonight, but you're going to get everything that you're going to need to give her family closure. But I want you to understand something, and I'm going to say this, not hearsay, but to say, like, okay, my religion is not no goose chase. This is the real deal right here. What you people signed up for. Okay. High point. It's a high point. Lead is a high point rifle.
What kind of intelligence?
Intelligence of when would be the best window of opportunity. What roles to take in. You realize that one, right? So if you're coming from that crime scene, you can hit it straight out to Fort.
Additional footage had been pulled from cameras along the route to Kruger's abandoned SUV. On the evening of September 3, Jenkins confessed to all 4 slayings during a rambling 8-hour interview. Jenkins told police that the acts were sacrifices to Apophis, a deity, in the ancient Egyptian religion. He was charged with 4 counts of slaying following the confession. Trial and sentencing. In handwritten letters dated November 3, 2013, submitted to the Omaha World-Herald, prosecutors and a judge, Jenkins said he wished to plead guilty to all counts in the 4 slayings and that he would protect Apophis's kingdom with animalistic savage brutality.
The 4 murders by the defendant. It is therefore the sentence of this court as follows. At case Class 1 felony, death. Count 2, use of a deadly weapon, firearm, to commit consecutive to all murder convictions at counts 1, 4, 7, and 10. Count 3, CR 13-2768. Count 1, murder in the first degree, a class 4 to 50 years to run consecutive to all murder convictions at counts 1, 4, 7.
On February 19, 2014, Jenkins filed a federal lawsuit seeking $24.5 million from the state of Nebraska for wrongfully releasing him from prison. He stated that his claims of hearing voices from Apophis were repeatedly ignored. In the 6-page handwritten filing, he stated that being kept in solitary confinement augmented his schizophrenia. He blamed corrections officials for the forced layings. Jenkins claimed that his problems were caused by mental illness and that he had schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and obsessive-compulsive disorder. The judge ordered a psychiatric evaluation, and a psychiatrist concluded that Jenkins had an antisocial personality disorder and was faking psychotic symptoms. Jenkins was declared competent to stand trial after scoring 68 on an administered IQ test, and the proceedings against Jenkins commenced. On his request, Jenkins was allowed to represent himself at trial under the guidance of advisory attorneys. Throughout the trial, Jenkins maintained that he acts under the command of Apophis. His courtroom antics included speaking in tongues, howling, and laughing at prosecutors recounted the details of his victim's demise.
If you don't tell me what the heck happened out there, people are going to think the absolute worst. If it went bad, if there's someone panicked, if they did something really stupid, now's the time, because otherwise, you're... I got Nikko Jenkins. I got you.
What do you mean, sir?
I got the weapon. I got Nikko Jenkins. I already, I know who, I know what, I know when, I know where.
On April 16, 2014, Judge Peter Batalin found Nikko Jenkins guilty of all 4 slayings. Jenkins was initially scheduled to be sentenced on August 11, 2014. The date was delayed indefinitely, following a hearing held to determine whether he was capable of understanding the capital punishment proceedings against him. On July 29, Judge Batalin ordered Jenkins to be housed at the Lincoln Regional Center Psychiatric Hospital until doctors were satisfied with his condition. Officials at the regional center refused to house Jenkins due to inadequate security, but doctors agreed to treat him at a Lincoln prison. In May 2017, Jenkins was sentenced to his end by a 3-judge panel. He was also sentenced to 450 years on weapons charges connected with the slayings. On April 20, 2020, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear his appeal. The convict is at the Nebraska Correctional Facility and still on America's end row. Who were the Leverings and the Jenkins? That finding was reported in a package of stories that explored generations of crime and violence. This was more poignant because it marked an extraordinary fall from grace that began with a Native American ancestor, Levi Levering, who had been a distinguished tribal leader. He was the first Native American commissioner to the Presbyterian General Assembly in 1911 and successfully lobbied Congress in 1920 to protect tribal members' rights to their land.
I will testify to that. And this is the first time that I've ever aided and assisted law enforcement in my life. It's golden. Any jury's not going to look at me and say, oh, he's told before and he's done. With my history, that woman's husband and children, that woman's husband is grieving right now. Killer, that just wanted to go trophy. I'm documenting psychiatrically.
The World Herald reported the following about this family. A name that was respected in Nebraska 100 years ago has become synonymous with lawlessness as generations of Leverings succumb to alcohol, drugs, and violence. Nikko Jenkins, as a kid, had a difficult upbringing and struggled with mental illness from a young age. His family members have also reported a history of neglect and trauma, which may have influenced his subsequent actions. Mutilating his member happened a few months after a botched attempt to carve 666 onto his forehead. Since he wasn't looking into the mirror, Jenkins made a 999. But beyond his crime, who is he? Nikko Jenkins' wife. Shalonda Jenkins married Nikko Jenkins at Tecumseh State Prison on 6 February 2010. The two criminals were serving jail terms then. Nevertheless, they spent only 4 weeks as a couple outside the prison and had similar facial writings and drawings. Shalonda is usually linked with her husband's crimes, though not severely punished by him. She had a challenging childhood as she spent her teenage years in prison for various law infringements. At the same time, she has also been termed a famous face in correctional centers.
Voice that came and was just like, if you do what I tell you, sorry for the victims. I feel sorry for all four of them. I feel sorry for people who got hurt. If you follow my demands, then I'll make sure you're safe and make sure you're okay. Or rather, he has to do life without parole or whatever. I just want my husband to get the mental help that he needs.
The ex-wife of the slayer has finished her one-year jail term in the Nebraska Women's Correctional Facility in New York. She is a free Omaha citizen, and there has been no report of her breaching the law. But before her eventual release, Nikko Jenkins served a jail term thrice. In 2013, she was sentenced to 1 year imprisonment as a suspected accomplice to her former husband in a spree of slayings in August. This was based on the fact that they had only been outside the prison for 4 weeks after their marriage.
So loudly, deputies had to ask them to settle down. But Prosecutor Brenda Beadle says the judge didn't say, well,
I knew he wasn't guilty. I know my son wouldn't have done nothing like that.
Day one that Tony never in any kind of way would have done anything to assist Nikko or any other one to commit a crime.
Guns, short shotguns, all the time in their pants. That's how they're not going to bring it in and walk in the middle of a hotel with a shot. Thing to gain from telling the police what she saw that night and everything to lose.
Verdict will affect Nikko Jenkins' murder case. As for Anthony Wells, Douglas County Corrections tells me he won't be going home to...
In addition, she was arrested in 2019 after the former girlfriend of her son's father reported she was kicking and screaming at her door. When the authorities saw her, she said her name was Shaw Moore, but was later identified by her car registration number. Another interesting character is Dawn Arguello from Lubbock, Texas. 2019 declared her undying love for Nikko. She said she wanted to marry him. The 49-year-old woman reportedly became emotionally attached to him when volunteering for an inmate advocacy group. However, it is unknown if they actually had a relationship or if she was just a fan. That's all for today's video. See you next time.